Hello everyone, welcome to History Made Awesome. My name is Eric, and for today's video, we'll be breaking down the new trailer came out for Ridley Scott's new film, Napoleon, which I hope will be coming out in November. And joining me today to help me break down this trailer is Daniel Reynas. You may have seen him on some of our U4 gameplays. What's up, Daniel, and welcome back to the channel. How are you? How are you doing?
Hey, thanks, Eric. I'm doing great. Just to quickly introduce myself, I'm a colleague of Eric's in the history department, and I specialize exactly in this period. I study the Napoleonic era, more specifically the invasion of Spain, and you can imagine I definitely have some thoughts about the movie.
Yeah, definitely. I'm someone who got into history really through learning about Napoleon, especially my period, which is really Spain as well, 18th and early 19th century, and Napoleon
Mhm.
and his ventures does have some impact on what I research. So, again, really interested to see how this movie turns out. And let's just watch the film, just watch the trailer really quick, and then we'll kind of go break down what we think the plot's going to be and what are some of our initial thoughts before it comes out. So, let's let it play.
First to admit when I make a mistake. I simply never do.
Okay, so I think just on the kind of just watching it through without really breaking it down, I think there's some things you can kind of pick out. I think we definitely see that Ridley Scott, definitely known for making really nice visual things seen on screen. Like things look very action packed, things look really nice. The tone, I like the tone that the film's setting from the first jump. Um, what's your kind of thoughts just watching just without really breaking it down? Daniel, your thoughts on this?
So I kind of have two approaches because I'm not just historically focused on the Napoleonic era. I love film, and you're absolutely right about Ridley Scott. He's always been very visual as a director, and I'm conflicted because there's a part of me that's like, yeah, fuck yeah, love watching this trailer. But there's also parts where like I don't really know about that, and it's like I have some worries, both from the historical side and also a little bit from the movie side. And it's like actually a little bit tough to reconcile watching this trailer for a Ridley Scott movie, considering what his first movie was. Like I don't know if a lot of people know this, but his first feature film was actually a movie about the Napoleonic era. It was called The Duelists, specifically about two cavalry officers in Napoleon's army who kept fighting duels.
Hmm.
And comparing the look of the two films, it feels like night and day. Like he's definitely going for an epic look. The story he's telling spans like 30 years. It's bombastic, but I feel like some of the emotions that the trailer, and again, I fully recognize this is a trailer. We don't know what the movie's going to be like
Hmm.
exactly, but the trailer's kind of picking up on some themes that I'm not sure I agree with.
Hmm.
But this is obviously something we can discuss more in detail.
Yeah, definitely. I think just coming into it just fresh and think about it. The time thing is going to be interesting to see how they deal with it. It is a lot of time to pack in a 2 hour and 38 minute movie.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and again, there's not a lot of like what the plot's going to be. But I think that's one thing we'll try to figure out. Like, how is this movie going to tell 30 years of history in a 2 hour time span? We know Josephine will be centered. The Josephine Bonaparte relationship will be
Yeah,
centered to
yeah.
that. So let's try to see kind of how they're going to play it out with the film, and then see how their direction is. So right now we're going to go break it down, not scene by scene, but pretty close to that, and try to figure out what
Yeah.
is the movie trying to be about, and our thoughts about that direction that they might be taking. So I'm going to lower the
For sure.
volume a little bit. Let's see how this goes. So 1793. So this is literally the heart of the Terror.
Mhm.
The Terror begins in 1793, and if we're actually thinking about history, the revolution began in 1789, and so they've gone through, I believe, two governments at this point in
Yeah,
French time,
minimum.
and this is the National Convention, and so
And
shit's
I
just going
actually
down.
have,
Yeah.
yeah, the trailer starts with the execution of Marie Antoinette, and already here I have some issues. Let's just say there's a very long history of depicting the terror a certain way, and it feels like it's rehashing a lot of that imagery. The French revolutionaries is kind of like these bloodthirsty people off with their heads kind of thing, and it's
Hmm.
not like we're excusing violence. Violence happened. Like Marie Antoinette was brutally executed,
Yeah.
but it's more like there's not much curiosity as to why this violence is going on. And something I will note right now, the first thing we're seeing right now is the execution of Marie Antoinette in '93.
Mhm.
But later, like within a couple seconds, I think it's going to show us Napoleon putting down the royalist counter-revolution in 1795.
So
And from the
yeah,
trailer, again, stressing again that this is a 2-minute trailer. I totally appreciate that the movie can be very different. So everything I'm basing on is just from the trailer.
yeah. I think
But
we'll
it makes
I
no
think I was gonna say because in the next couple minutes we'll see kind of Napoleon. I think that's what this film is really kind of centered on, is really Napoleon and his kind of navigating his rise and his looking at the situations going on in France and really him kind of sticking himself in that situation to make himself more powerful and give himself more power and prestige. So we'll try to see. Yeah, so they're gonna show that what's it called? The execution of Marie Antoinette soon. But the next scene we're gonna hear Napoleon talking to. We'll try to see who he's talking to because I can't really figure it out. So
I'm nearly positive it's Barras.
Chaos in the streets.
chaos in the streets, like we said. Yeah, probably Marie Antoinette getting executed.
We must make an example, or France will fall.
And I just want the audience to look at how they're framing this violence. And especially here, I'm glad you paused right here. Look at Napoleon's face and look at everyone around him. Keep in mind, this is in 93. I don't even know if he was in Paris in 93. I don't think he was. But
Mhm.
forgetting that, look how differently he's looking at all this violence going on than everyone else. It's kind of the trailers pushing this narrative of him as like, I don't really like the revolution. This is, you people have gone too far. We need a little order. And it's going for this interpretation of like Napoleon as, law and order kind of guy. And I'm not sure that really holds. He was very much a Jacobin in 1793.
Oh yeah, definitely with Robespierre and all this people. He literally
Mhm.
almost got executed himself if it
Yeah,
wasn't
exactly.
for
Absolutely. He was very close with Robespierre's brother, who would get executed.
And I don't think
And
I don't
Napoleon was
yeah.
arrested and almost executed.
Yeah, no, and I don't even think the Robespierres are even mentioned as cast members in the. I mean, we looked at the cast and we didn't see him when who was Robespierre,
Yeah,
I
they,
believe.
they weren't shown in the cast that's available so far as of the date of recording. I don't see anything in the cast about Robespierre. We just see um, uh, Josephine, Barras. Those are the two big ones from the time.
And I believe the people he was talking to in the couple scenes, and just kind
We
of.
must make an example, or
I don't know. One of these people must be his brother Lucien or Barras, but I'm
Yeah,
not sure which one is which. It's kind of
I'm
hard to
just from
tell.
context. Like there's nothing saying one way or the other, but I think from context, it's a guy in power saying, "Hey, can you help bail us out?" I believe from context that's Barras because he was the one in charge of the directory at the time. He made Napoleon in charge of the defense of Paris, and that's something I do want to discuss.
Yeah, yeah. So we'll just let it play a little longer.
France will fall. What would you do if this assignment of defense was transferred to
That's probably Barras. And
And look right here, if you can pause for 1 second.
yeah, I'm gonna go back.
In the magic of the trailer, it makes it seem like what's happening right now happened immediately after the execution of Marie Antoinette. There's a 2-year difference. And what's happening right here, these guys, these revolutionaries who are approaching this line of cannons, and Napoleon's going to mow them down in a second, those are not revolutionaries. Those are counter-revolutionaries. Those are royalists. These are people who thought the revolution has gone too far. We hated the terror. We don't want a republic anymore. We want to bring the king back. Those are the people who actually charged into Paris, and those are the people that Napoleon put down. They're obviously were civilians. I'm not saying the guy's a saint and he didn't kill people, as we'll see in a later frame. It's showing civilians are getting killed in the crossfire. That's fine. That did happen. Like, it's fine to show that. But it's
Hmm.
this issue of framing. The trailer makes it seem like the two things that are very different are the same thing, and that's a bit of an issue, I think.
Yeah, and I also think what it may come down to, it may simplify these political things that are occurring within the French Revolution.
Yeah.
And I think I think it may just come from the perception of like how Napoleon views the entire situation. That for him, all these things, all these barriers are just kind of like, when it comes to like counter-revolutionaries or pro-Jacobins or whatever, that these are just kind of like things in his way to gaining power, and that he'll do whatever it takes to get power. And I think that's what they're showing with, especially within this scene is that what he'll do to take power for himself. I think.
I have thoughts about that, but I do agree. I think that's the framing they're going for, and I totally agree.
Okay, so let's play.
I promise you brilliant successes.
Here's actually, if you could pause for 1 second.
Yeah.
There's going to be a couple of clips from this scene. It seems to be all happening in the same time. It's clearly during the revolution. You can see with all the cockades and the red, white, and blue banners. Another issue of framing. If you as the audience look, how would you describe this kind of party that's going on? It looks pretty chaotic, right? Like it's clearly this very nice mansion, and it looks like these people are trashing it, right? And especially if you look in a couple of seconds, this lady who's going to talk to Napoleon, she doesn't look very fancily dressed. She has very short cropped hair. She doesn't look like a noble person. So again, this issue of framing the revolutionaries as this kind of like either violent or kind of like hedonistic, it feels like this is following into that visual trope of like, how do we show the Jacobins?
Like they're very much like not depraved, but
Yeah, no, that's a good word.
Yeah.
I think that's a trope that's been cashed in on a lot, and I don't think Ridley Scott is explicitly saying the Jacobins were depraved, but it feels like some of these visuals are tapping into that imagery.
they're kind of like wild beasts, kind of. Everything that was like stability before is kind of not. And I think what's interesting is that they'll kind of show Napoleon as like his early career, like he wasn't someone who was like the most like gregarious person, or I guess he could make connections, but like he wasn't seen as someone who like was like, if you looked at him as early career, you didn't see as someone who was really destined for power. Like he was really just struggling, trying to get by.
For sure. He was a nobody until very late, until pretty much Brumaire. He was basically a nobody.
Yeah, but I think you see him really trying to get connections through joining these types of parties and trying to talk to people. And let's see what she says.
Is this costume you have on?
This is my uniform.
And then this is the siege of Toulon, which is one of the mini battles that they'll show. Yeah.
I led the French victory at Toulon.
What is your name?
Napoleon.
As the course of my life just changed. Napoleon.
And yep.
Oh yeah. This is a big issue. Play it. I'll tell you when to pause.
I'm destined
Pause.
for greatness.
That never fucking happened. I'm sorry. This is big, and I don't know how this made it into the final shot. And it's not. It's like it's so wrong. It's like wrong about how it's wrong. Okay, so there's this famous legend that's completely false, has zero basis in fact. There's a legend that the reason the Sphinx of Giza has no nose is because Napoleon ordered his gunnery, his artillery, to use it for target practice. Never happened. This movie can't even get that legend right. He's shooting the pyramids for what reason? Also, and it's clearly like, again, this is taking away the joke part. You can see in the bottom, okay, this is clearly the Battle of the Pyramids because those are clearly the Mamluks. The legend is that they fought in the shade of the pyramids. They were visible. It wasn't close enough where ricochets or mis-aimed shots would be hitting them. It wasn't that close. So it's like, at best, this is like kind of just taking liberties to make a really gorgeous visual. This battle happening right in front of the pyramids. At worst, it's bastardizing an already incorrect urban legend. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I believe this event happened in
98.
98. So we've gone from 1793 to 1795, 1798. The interesting thing to see how is they're going to connect all these big time skips that they'll be doing.
For sure.
That's the one interesting thing we'll see is because, so this is a very famous battle. This really kind of starts off with Napoleon's kind of legendary, kind of like, it gains his legendary status, allows him to take power later, which we'll see. And, this battle goes actually pretty easy for Napoleon. Like, he just wins pretty handily.
It's what basically allows him to conquer Egypt. It's an important battle for sure.
Yes.
Visual of shooting the pyramids, which is like, oh my god, that is so wrong.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of liberties taken with this film and many other films that are similar. So let's continue on.
I'm destined for greatness. But those in power will only see me as a sword.
Okay.
I did a little research, and I'm nearly positive that that shot that we saw of him on horseback is part of his Italian campaign. Just because I remember reading some notes saying this is a picture of Napoleon at Arcola, a battle that happened in his Italian campaign. So I'm nearly positive this is either 1796 or 97.
Yeah, and then we do a
But this visual of him on horseback leading the charge, no,
no.
by that point there were very few generals who even do that anymore. But Napoleon specifically was not like a lead from the front, charge into enemy. No,
Except
that's
for
just
that
a
time he
visual
what
effect.
was the bridge or what was the battle on the bridge? It was in the Italian.
Arcola, that specifically Arcola, but that wasn't on horseback. So
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
it's kind of
Again,
mixing up.
liberties. lots of.
Exactly.
But I think he really does show is that like he was, especially in Early Parties, he was very like trying to lead from the front, very courageous, trying to like drive his men forward. But
Yeah.
this just looks way more epic, I guess, than him just charging down a bridge and
Yeah.
then falling over and into the water later, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I suggest.
And then this is probably 1815.
This is going to be 1800 because it's Brumaire, and this is actually incorrect. So I looked up the cast, and this person who's going to speak, like, if you press play for like a second and a half, or just one quick second, that guy is Talleyrand. So yeah,
Really?
he's basically this important official. Yeah, that's Talleyrand.
Okay.
And this line makes either no sense or kind of, but not really. So in the next couple scenes in the trailer, it's going to show the coup of Brumaire, which is basically Napoleon becomes not the emperor of France. He becomes what's called the first consul. This coup was designed to take down one revolutionary government and replace it with another, still a republic. That's an important thing to know. The consulate was still a republic. So no one in 1800 would have said, I think you should declare yourself king, because even Napoleon wasn't thinking that at the time. And this coup was to install himself and two other consuls, as this kind of like dictatorial for sure. Like we can definitely talk about how the consulate wasn't really democratic, but in name it was still a republic. And they're framing it as him kind of taking the throne, which it wasn't yet.
Yeah. Brumaire, I mean, a lot of these things are in stages. This is the coup of Brumaire, what we're seeing. I just freeze it right now.
Yeah, this image that it's paused on right here is Brumaire.
And what actually happened was actually a bit more chaotic and not like Sumbury-esque as they're showing here.
I actually made a note of this. You're absolutely right. Yeah, like the coup of Brumaire did not go down smoothly, like at all. There was even a moment where the actual politicians like pushed him out because they were like saying, "No, you're not going to do a coup. Get out of here."
And then we'll see in this scene. I'll just play right now. This part right.
It's a cool visual. Like, don't get me wrong. Like when he says this line,
yeah, shall we
yeah,
vote?
that's a badass line. I'm not gonna lie. That is a cool line, but it doesn't really reflect the reality of how it went down. And that's a historian of me speaking. As a person who likes art, it doesn't have to match. Like it's thematic and it's a great line. So I'm not angry at that line.
No.
But it's more like, is this trailer showing the coup to be a Republican thing or an imperial thing?
Yeah, I think shall we vote? This must be Brumaire. I mean, like by the time Napoleon's emperor, sure. I find that like scene in line kind of pointless. It's like he already has all the power by the time he becomes emperor. I think in 1804. Yeah, basically his brother like helps him out to become consul, like really greatly in this scene. But yeah.
As a matter of fact, like the coup wasn't really Napoleon's idea. Like really, the brainchild behind the coup was this guy named C.S. And they just made Napoleon like kind of the face of it. It was a bunch of guys who wanted to write a new constitution for the republic, and they said, okay, in order to make this coup happen, we need to have like this guy who's a popular general be the face of it. Like if it's just a couple politicians, they'll just say, oh, it's a coup, we're not going to support it. But if it's like popular general, people will support it, and they chose Napoleon for it. He didn't come up with a coup, and in theory, he was supposed to be a puppet for CS, but obviously that's not how it turned out.
Yeah.
How do we vote?
And this is him becoming emperor, of course, and I'll let it play a little bit.
And I do like how they emphasize that he crowned himself. That is absolutely true. Like he took it out of the Pope's hands and put it on his own head.
And then there's a very famous painting of it, and I'll let it just play. This is
the Sacre of Jacques David. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen it in person. I'll put a picture of it here. It's fucking huge.
Beautiful. Dude,
It's huge.
yeah.
It's yeah, but you can tell like I think this will be the talk for the later end of the video, but definitely this is really much a legend of Napoleon rather than historical reality of Napoleon, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we'll hit play. Witness the Rise. That was probably Waterloo, I believe. This is Waterloo.
I'm not sure. Oh
That
yeah, given
this
that it's a British person talking, that I believe it might be Waterloo, but I haven't seen enough to confirm it.
yeah, I think this. I'll tell you why in the next scene. It's Waterloo. In the Battle of Waterloo, there's a point where the French send out their cavalry to attack the British who've gone
Yeah.
behind the
Yeah.
hill, and basically they form squares to defeat the
Yeah.
French cavalry, which basically kind of and it basically hurts Napoleon's ability to win the battle at the end. It's one of many things that helped him not win the battle, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
It's
we
one of the big what ifs. If they didn't do the big cavalry charge, it might have won the battle. It's one of those things that people have been arguing about for 200 years. Yeah, for sure.
that's Russia.
Oh, right here, I think that's the burning of Moscow.
This is
I'm nearly positive that's a quick visual of Moscow.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's definitely Moscow. So 1812, I
I'll
believe.
be interested to see who they say is at fault for it, because immediately, like when it happened in 1812, people immediately said that the French burned down Moscow, and that's like actually not true. We know now because basically a bunch of people talked up like a decade or so after it happened. It was self-sabotaged by this one specific Russian officer named Rostopchin, and the idea was to
Oh.
deny Napoleon's army, housing and stuff like that. But for a very long time, people assumed the French just burned it down just because.
Yeah, I actually did not know that. Thank you for the info, Daniel. You learn something every day. Let's play on.
See, I know something.
Who's this? Who?
Josephine, nearly positive it's Josephine.
It is? Okay. Well then, okay. Well,
I mean, I know they did cast. They do have Marie Louise cast in the movie, but I think it is Josephine.
I don't know, mate. We'll see. Oh, that's Josephine, I think. Yep.
Yeah.
You are just a tiny little brute. It's not.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Josephine and Napoleon have a very interesting relationship? Like it was.
So this is, yeah, it was very interesting, and it's one of those things where it's like if it's done right, it can be really interesting, but it'll be a tough line to follow. So basically, what happens is when they first get married, Josephine is the one who's important. She's important in this post-terror revolutionary landscape, and she feels that she's kind of forced to marry Napoleon, and she's marrying down. Like Napoleon was a nobody. As something they're getting at, like this looks like Josephine's being really mean to Napoleon, and this is kind of emblematic of the relationship. To make a very long story short, when they first got married, Napoleon really loved Josephine. Josephine didn't really like Napoleon, and that balance kind of inverted by the time they got divorced in 1809. And especially in the beginning, when they first got married, Napoleon was like obsessed with her. Like if you read some of the personal letters, they're like risque even by today's sexual standards. Like without getting like too into it, like dude had it bad for her, and she was at best in this early stage, especially during the Italian campaign, she was kind of disdainful of him. So it happened a lot that months or weeks and months would go by without her writing anything to him. He would go insane. He'd be sending constant letters, I love you, I love you. She didn't really like him at first. And I think by the end, when they got divorced, she's one of very few people who I think really knows him, knows who he is. And this line, I think, A, it's just accurate for who Napoleon is. And B, I buy the argument that she might have said this to him.
Oh yeah, I think the life like it gets pretty testy by the end, and it gets kind of sad a little bit.
Yeah.
Very sad.
Absolutely. Like the guy did treat her like shit. You have to be clear about that.
Definitely.
Without me.
All of Europe is uniting forces against me.
Sure.
Against me.
What's the outcome of this if you don't succeed?
Your Majesty, we are discovered.
Okay, this scene. This is the second major historical inaccuracy that I have to talk about, and it's another one of those things where they took an urban legend and kind of took what was already wrong and made it even more wrong. So, really quickly, what this scene shows is basically it looks like the French army is ambushing a bunch of Russian troops. They marched out into some frozen ice in a frozen lake, and he's going to have some artillery kind of open fire. Like they show themselves, they take off the tarp. Aha, we surprise you, and we're going to shoot out the lake, forcing you to drown in the lake. That didn't really happen, and this is something that I was corrected on really recently. So basically, making it this happened at the Battle of Austerlitz. And after the battle had already been won, after the French had already beaten the Austrians and the Russians in the field, while they were retreating, there were a couple of frozen lakes, because this happened in December.
Mhm.
And there was an urban legend that basically he ordered French artillery to open fire on the lake, forcing the ice to crack under, force a lot of people to drown. That's not really what happened. Basically, what happened was right after the battle, there were reports initially from Austrian officers, but it made its way to the French, saying that a couple of people drowned in the lake as they were retreating. And the ultimate records were, I believe, 3 bodies were pulled up, 3 human bodies, and like 100 or so horses. Because basically what happens is a lot of people know, hey, don't run on a frozen ice pond because, it might crack. What really happened is that in the hustle and bustle, people running away, some of them might have accidentally run onto the ice, but not a lot of people did. And this idea of like shooting the ice so that they all fall under is an old urban legend started by Napoleon himself. Like, to be absolutely clear, Napoleon himself drummed up this story to make himself more popular. Like, look how devious I am. But this is like taking an already kind of false story and making it even worse, because they didn't ambush these Russian troops. They weren't like surprising them like, haha, we caught you. No, that's not what happened, like, at all.
Yeah, it's funny because when I was talking to Daniel about this scene, and I knew it was probably Austerlitz, but I didn't remember any ice being involved in the major part of the battle. And the reason why I didn't remember is because in the actual battle itself, this scene did not happen. Like, in terms of like the actual 2 armies coming together and trying to fight, like, I don't remember the scene actually happened. Now, after the battle, I was thinking, okay, maybe that might have been a possibility. But when you look at the actual battle, it looks like how he somehow surprised them. Like, that doesn't look like an army that's running away, essentially. That looks like an army that's looking to attack Napoleon. So, again...
Exactly, and they make it look like Napoleon kind of like feigned weakness to catch them. Like, it says, sir, we've been discovered. Good. Like, his idea was, we want them to come stumble upon us. It wasn't like that. Like, as you're absolutely right, this did not happen during the battle. Nothing like it happened during the battle, and this is kind of based on like a half-truth, and they've already blown that completely out of proportion.
Now, there was some trickery from Napoleon during that battle, but not to this instance.
Oh, for sure.
Not to this instance, of course. But, yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's continue on.
I simply never do.
I think we can just kind of keep it there. I have a lot more, like, final thoughts in terms of, like, how I think about the entire project and, like, how it's being constructed. There are some things, like, some little things in history here and there that, of course, are problematic, but there's also some interesting things. I would say
For sure.
my biggest point is I'm very unsure about, like I said in the beginning of the video, about covering 30 years of history in 2 hours. Like, again, we saw through the trailer, there's so many time jumps, like, so many. Like, how are you going to string that all together? Now, I think it'd probably be best doing through a mini-series lens, kind of similar to what they did with other. The one that comes to mind is War and Peace, is one that comes to mind.
Yeah.
So there's a BBC article. I think in terms of film, I like films that cover a short time period, especially with this. One film that comes to mind is Waterloo, the 1977 film, I believe, which is amazing. It's awesome. That film works well because...
Fully recommend it.
Yeah, no, definitely. That film works well because it's focusing on one event. It can really, I think, show off what a movie can do in that time frame. I think that what they're gonna have to do probably is through like letters and like over dialogue, like I marched through here and did this. Now let's show the next scene what's going on. That's probably what they're probably gonna do. But still, they're showing like they're gonna jump over a lot of stuff, and it may kind of be like, how did he do that? What's going on there?
Exactly.
But I think in terms of what the film's going to do, in terms of how it's going to centralize the story, I think it's really going to be the Josephine and Napoleon relationship is what's going to drive and string the entire story together, which I actually think is a very
Yeah.
interesting way to do it, and something that's very uncommon. A lot of people focus on like the battles and the politics and stuff, but I think if you do it through that lens and we'll see how they do that, I think it'll make for kind of interesting story. The thing is also is that this film feels like this is the Napoleon legend, really. I think.
Yep,
Um,
absolutely.
but I'm interested to see if like there's like Napoleon legend on top, but then you see kind of the Josephine relationship with Napoleon. You kind of see how misguided that view is. I guess you start to see the holes in that lens. That
I
Napoleon
mean, I
creates for
think we kind
himself.
of see it in the trailer. I think we
Yeah.
see it in the trailer a bit. Like we see him saying, "Oh, I'm just never wrong." I think that it does explicitly use the word tyrant. Like I think the movie is going to try to show this is how he thought of himself. He was actually like this bloodthirsty tyrant, and it's like I don't disagree,
Hmm.
but it's the issue of framing. First off, I completely agree with you. Like there are some lives, some biographies where it's like there's just no way to talk about it in 2 hours. Like just so much happens in such a short amount of time historically. And I agree that it should probably have been a mini series, or if it had to be a movie, make it a shorter time frame. Because that movie you're talking about, Waterloo, actually it starts with the 1814, with like the last days of his first empire before the 100 Days. And even then, this is a 3 hour movie that
Mm.
spans about 2 years, or a year and a half, let's say, somewhere around there. And
Yeah.
even then, it's still, I wouldn't say struggles, but it has to work very hard to give the audience the context just specifically of the Waterloo campaign, what's going on. Now,
Mm.
this movie that's 2 hours, 38 minutes is going to try to talk about nearly 30 years of context. Like the first thing we saw was 1793, so the terror. But from 1793 to 1815, that's a long time. And as you absolutely agree, I think it might struggle with those time jumps. My main issue is framing. It's again, other than those two issues of the pyramids and the ice, I didn't see anything outright just false. Other than those two
No.
things,
Yeah.
for me, it's a matter of framing. And framing is really interpretation. It's like as a historian, I think you're saying anything incorrect. I'm just like not sure I agree with exactly how you're putting it forward. One of the main issues of framing I see is this idea of him. Yes, he's a tyrant. He always has been a tyrant. Like you can see that from even his Jacobin days. I'm not defending this guy as like a figure of democracy, but it kind of shows him as like opportunistic to an extent. I personally am not sure I agree, and this is something where even historians disagree. Like if you
Yeah.
ask another Napoleonic historian, he would probably disagree with me. I
Yeah.
think he is opportunistic, but it's not a matter of him not believing in the revolution. If anything, I think
Oh.
he does believe in a lot of the core tenets of the revolution, but he isn't afraid of just like using propaganda and making stuff up just to keep himself in power. Like I don't see those two things as believing in the revolution and wanting to stay in power. I don't think they're diametrically opposed to each other, and I think the movie is going to try to frame it that way.
Yeah. Well, I think I can see where you're coming from. Like he believes in the revolution, but he sees himself as the person who will bring the revolution to everyone, and that's why
Exactly.
he gains power.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I totally see what you're saying, but. Yeah, I think I'm really excited to see the film. That doesn't mean like I'm not like excited. I'm just really curious. Some trepidations here and there, like we've discussed, but still gonna check it out. It's Thanksgiving.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be interesting. I think what we'll do is, we're part of the at Florida State University. We have the Institute of Napoleon and the French Revolution. So we have an interesting little group of people who are really interested in this stuff, and we might do a much longer podcast and kind of break things down and discuss things. We might
Oh, for sure. I would love to do that.
we might also bring in our advisor, Professor Blaffarm. He may want to come in and chime in on some things, even though he doesn't like this film, or he just doesn't like Napoleonic films in general. But no, yeah, very excited, and hope you guys enjoyed the context, enjoyed the video. We'll definitely have some more breakdowns, more videos later. Daniel, thank you for joining us. We'll definitely see you back on the channel sometime soon. And
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me. And guys, please check out Eric's work.
yeah, like, subscribe, do all the thingy jigs, hit the bell notification, and I'll check you out there. Bye-bye.